Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. I had a great sleep last night, and yesterday was just a weird day. It was such a weird day because I told you I went to go see the FBI for that death threat, and it was like I was being interrogated myself, which I completely understand. And so it was one of those where it kind of brought up to surface the defenses that I usually have to make to somebody that is skeptical. And I don't like being on the defense or having to explain myself, but if I'm going to be given a context of why a person would do a death threat, whether it was intentional or whether it was just out of joking, because there's no way to understand context or tone, really, then they have to do what they had to do. So it was quite interesting being on that side of it. And I've never ever talked to the FBI before, so that was an interesting experience unto itself. But before I get into more of that, I'll get into that a little bit later. I do want to make a public apology, and I'll tell you why. Because in the beginning of well, I want to give a public apology to the LGBT community. And I'll tell you why. Because in the beginning, I was researching everything, like everything, down to the nubbin. And I looked at all of the sadness in the world, the different political associations, the political action communities, the different, discrimination, and I saw the anger and the activism, and I'm making these connections with all of these different interest groups. And so, I was using terminology like mutations, using terminology when it comes to procreation and all of that. And I didn't necessarily bring in everybody. Like I did, hey, Audrey, I did separate out because, we were taught in school that man and a woman, of course, make a baby, right? Okay. And that's fine. Yes, man and a woman make a baby. That's obvious. Unless you get a test tube baby, they still need to have DNA from a man or a woman, regardless. Hey, Lupe. So I was still coming from that standpoint of working from that perspective, which then, of course, leaves out a segment of the population that isn't straight, okay? Because that's talking about a straight crowd. Then I started looking at reproduction as a whole, that not just the straight, not just the LGBT that may have issues, because everybody has different cancer, disease, and chronic illness, but so does the straight people. And so now I'm all encompassing anybody that's in the procreation category, regardless of what it is. There's mutations going on because that's why humans have to procreate in whatever manner they do. Whatever manner. It doesn't matter what it is. Their feelings of whatever it is, it's based upon the instinct to procreate. Now, I know we've recreationalized, activities in the bedroom, and that's fine. But I'm not even going there. But I know in the beginning, through my research, I offended people, and I completely apologize. And I'm trying to rack my brain on what and how I could position this information to be able to reach the LGBT community without triggering them. And that's freaking hard. It's like I'm trying to step so carefully. And then I'm looking all over the internet and I'm seeing the transgender being discriminated against. Yes, I'm seeing the gays and the lesbians being discriminated against. And I'm like, that's not okay either. That's horrible. That is bad. Because people can't help what they feel, what they are. It's the biochemistry. You can't fight against nature. It's biochemistry. It's all natural. Everything that we do with our biochemistry is natural. Regardless. And this is where we have to not say only, well, this crowd is excused for biochemistry, but this crowd, we're going to go and lynch. No, everyone that does something according to their biochemistry is totally natural. And last night, I was thinking about what I was saying about the body, mind, and spirit. And I'm thinking, how am I going to say this without offending? And I do have some transgender on my Facebook. I do have, and one of them, Stephanie Ross, she tagged me in one of her posts, and she was saying, do you believe in transgender is okay and all this? And I'm like, absolutely. If this is what you feel based upon your biochemistry, and you are happy with what you feel, okay, as long as you're not breaking the law, because we have laws that are out there, then it's perfectly fine. If you are not happy with who you are, and you're not happy with whatever, if you have any cancer, disease, and chronic illness, then go make a change. And people are doing that. Right now, people are seeing that there is a misalignment with their body, mind, and spirit, and they're trying to make changes, whether it's getting surgeries, dressing differently, or finding the nearest protocol that's out there that is talking about, curing this or reversing that, right? So that people, when they see that there is a misalignment with their body, mind, and spirit, they're getting into action, and they're trying to find a way to take care of it. So I wrote, what if, now I saw this post about my genitals don't determine my gender. And I saw that, I'm like, oh God, I really, I've been getting attacked left and right because people think I'm homophobic, and I'm not. But I just didn't deliver some of the information in the best way it should. And Dr. Phil also capitalized on that, on my clumsiness of getting this information out, which is fine, okay. But I saw this post, this meme about, gender, or my genitals do not create my gender. Or my genitals does not determine my gender. And I'm like, oh my God, yes, I love this, because it's so true. Because in our mind, we know we want to be healthy. We know it, but we know something is wrong, but we just can't put our finger on it. In our mind, we know who we are as a human. We know it, but our body doesn't translate. It's like when someone has ALS and their hormones are stopping them from moving their organs, like lack of hormone or too much hormone, or moving their extremities. They can't move, but they still are very aware. That's like a jail, okay? So your mind knows what is supposed to be, but your body isn't necessarily in line because there's mutations. And I'm telling you that there are 3 things that kill people and that mess people up. And this is what I've been going over the last couple of days. It's Candida fungus, cancer, NK cells, natural killer cells, antibodies, and T cells, lymphocytes, and all that. And then hormone imbalance. Hormone imbalance. Okay, so when you know something, is wrong, and you know who you are, but your body doesn't translate, you feel like you're 25 years old, but your body and maybe your mind doesn't feel like you're 25 years old, but you're feeling it, but your body doesn't feel it. That says that there's a spirit that knows who you are. And then people go and try to correct the misalignment in their body. And it doesn't always come out the way they expect, but they do the best they can. Okay, they do the best they can. But I never would have come upon this if it hadn't been for the last 6 months of peeling back the layers. Okay, so I wrote body, mind, and spirit, and I wanted to share that meme, but I didn't want to have any backlash. I didn't know how it was going to get received, and so I wrote this: body, mind, and spirit. What if a slightly different context or perspective? Body, mind, and spirit. The mind knows, but the body is mutated by fluctuating hormones and messed up biochemistry. Once the body and the mind are aligned through Mother Nature, the spirit will finally be at peace. And that was a huge risk I took. And then I tagged Stephanie Ross in this because I wanted to see how she would receive this, because she tagged me in her post. So I felt that was an opening for me to have an open dialogue on misconceptions and misinterpretations and all of that, because I've got to be able to reach everybody. Nobody gets left out. And I'd never meant to leave anybody out, and I never meant to insult anybody. But at the time, even, back with Dr. Phil, I didn't have all of the information, the language, the science to be able to articulate exactly what I was thinking. So yeah, it came out like I was like, and I'm not. My God, I have so many gay friends. I'm from California. I think my first really good friend was a gay guy in San Jose, California. And I was contemplating on visiting him, but then I'm not sure because of all of this stuff out there about me being a and I'm not a homophobic, but I know I'm going to get a backlash because of how I was represented on national TV. And of course, me and my clumsy way of trying to get info out, because I'm learning in the process too, getting this protocol out and why people should do this and who is going to get benefit and why and who doesn't, is a lot to try to say in the most diplomatic manner, and it's not always going to come out correctly. And you got to forgive a person who may make a mistake. As long as they own up to the mistake, then it really should be forgiven. But not everybody has that intention to forgive because they have other agendas in mind. And I can't help that. But I can be very honest in what I really meant to say. But even then, I didn't even know exactly what I'm peeling back the layers. Every single month since Dr. Phil, I have been peeling back the layers of science and then how our society is run, and then what runs people and what runs me. Really, I'm actually studying myself. Why do psychologists go into the field of psychology? Because they're trying to figure themselves out themselves. Well, no different than me bringing this out to you guys. I'm trying to figure out who I am. What runs me? Because what runs me is ultimately what runs you, because we ain't any different. You may be a male, I'm a female. You may be from Chicago, Illinois, and I'm from Vietnam, living in California, moved to Ohio. Okay, so there really isn't any difference between you and I. So I know that what I'm going to go through is what you're ultimately going to go through too. Okay, so and Stephanie, she responded and she said, indeed. I said, do you agree with this? I asked her, do you agree with this? What did I say? It's right under this post too. She said, what did she say? Two more comments. So could this be, I said, Stephanie Ross, could this be possible? And I'm waiting, I'm hoping she wasn't going to take offense. I'm hoping that everything was going to be okay, la, la, la. And she says, a heart, yes, indeed. Which in a lot of ways vindicates me, because I'm not trying to make anyone feel like they're less than. I'm not trying to leave anybody out. And I've always said that. I am saying every human has the right intentions. They're trying to save their own life as well as other lives. But the biochemistries are all messed up, so they make wrong choices that may be against the law. Now, as long as you're not violating the law in any way whatsoever, then hey, it's fine. If someone does violate the law, we don't necessarily say, yay, that was a good thing. There are repercussions for violating the law, but we can understand where it comes from and find ways to build in certain programs that is not just intellectualizing what right or wrong is. It actually maybe is allow them to change their biochemistry. And I don't mean chemical castration, because that is another mutation on a person. What we really need to do is anyone that breaks the law and they have a mutated biochemistries, we need to get them healthier on a different trajectory. That's it. So anyone that doesn't break the law, hey, your biochemistry, if if you like it and you like your life and you like everything that goes on with it, more power to you. If you don't like your life and you want to change your biochemistry, I can't tell you exactly how it's going to come out. I have made some predictions. I've made some absolutes that may not necessarily been appropriate considering the context, but it was something that I had to go through and figure out and wrestle with. Okay, so yeah, I'm not ever going to say that Jilly Juice will ever cure the gay. That is not really ever where I was coming from. But that's a very easy politicized type of statement to then trigger a population that's already feeling raw from discrimination. Now it really comes down to, forget all of the political words, it comes down to biochemistry. Everybody has different biochemistry that causes them to be who they are, to believe what they believe, and then it also comes out in behaviors. And, you know, and so go back on my timeline and you can see all the things that I talk about, how, what things induce hormones and stuff with the biochemistry. What makes biochemistry fluctuate? The foods that you eat, the hormones in your body, your health practices, all of that does impact your biochemistry, and it manifests into specific behaviors as well as cancer, disease, and chronic illness. And so I have now finally narrowed everything down for all of you, so how easy this is to understand. Candida, which is cancer, is a fungus, is the one thing that you die from. Natural killer cells, antibodies, is the second thing you die from. And hormone imbalance is the third thing. And all three of these things work off each other, and what the industry, the allopathic and the holistic industry, use to manage your cancer, disease, and chronic illness and unhappiness and behaviors that are not aligned with the average person. And then over time, when you're playing too much in these specific areas, guess what? You pass away and things get worse. And so then also too, with the vaccine community, the anti-vax. Oh my God, in my book, I knew that vaccines were bad. I knew it in my heart of hearts as soon as I heard something from Alex Jones. But did I have the science? Did I have the diplomatic way of talking about it? No, I had to go through a lot of research and mistakes on, I don't know, on how this was delivered. And then, too, I had to go through all the different programming that's in our society. So when I first wrote my book, I did a lot of research because I knew innately that AIDS wasn't something that just materialized. It's like, AIDS, where the hell did that come from? And I remember back when I was a kid in the 1980s, and that was the big thing that my mom talked about. Oh, the AIDS virus, always use protection, learning how to put a condom on and all this stuff, and Nonoxynol 9, the foam for the women, and how you get AIDS is through physical contact, through bodily fluids, through tears, through spit, through semen, and all that stuff. And I'm just learning all about the AIDS stuff. I'm like, oh my God. And the people were dying left and right. And then I remember when I was in my 20s, and that was still obviously very much, what I was thinking about, because that's what I was raised with, was the AIDS thing, the AIDS epidemic. And, sex here and there, whatever, but I never wanted to get an AIDS test because I didn't want to know if I had AIDS or not. I didn't want to know. And once you find out you have the antibody, which I don't even know the difference between AIDS virus and the HIV positive, I didn't know the difference. I didn't want to know if I came down with AIDS, and I would deal with it then. But if not, then whatever. So I never wanted to know. Because why would I open up that can of worms? I saw people who get in the tests and they're like, oh, I'm HIV positive. And then all of a sudden they're on all these drugs and now they're deteriorating. And I'm not going to be one of those. So I was like, forget it. So anyways, when I wrote my book, I was researching the AIDS virus because I thought it was so weird. How would AIDS just materialize? The body doesn't just materialize a disease. You know, the body doesn't have suicide contracts. Disease doesn't just lay in the dirt. AIDS doesn't just lay in the dirt, or else all the Indians in Papua New Guinea or any other, you know, place where they don't have a lot of Western conveniences like, you know, hospitals and vaccines. How the hell do they live without getting the AIDS virus? So why is it in our society that we're coming down with all these different diseases? And they're very exotic. AIDS is an exotic disease. You're not going to find that in the Indian population. Did the Indians have AIDS or anything like that? So then I started looking at like, okay, so AIDS, it had to have been introduced. It had to have been introduced. And that was in my first book that I since retired. That was the one that the trolls went and downloaded from the courthouse when I went up against my publisher for not taking care of her duties. And I did submit my first book into evidence. And then once you do that, now it's public knowledge. And so everybody had a field day with that. Oh my God. But whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm glad it wasn't published because I was still very like in rudimentary research. And I'm glad that I had more time behind me to develop a better book, right? So anyways, but I did, so I knew that AIDS wasn't something that materialized, but you know, I really couldn't articulate in the best way possible. But then where I was able to articulate later on down the road is that then I looked at the vaccinations. And I'm looking at, okay, well, we're getting vaccinations. We don't even know what's in them, for one. And number two, why would you, if you have an immune system, why would you vaccinate yourself? What's the point? And so, and I'm thinking like, you know, now, okay, so then how did the AIDS epidemic happen? Well, I mean, like we've tried to figure out what patient zero, who was patient zero? We don't know who patient zero was. But does it matter? Well, no. I mean, as long as we know that it was introduced, that the body just doesn't materialize AIDS and it's not laying in the dirt, then there is a patient zero somewhere. Who it was, we have no idea. But it doesn't matter. It's out there because somebody has the antibody, okay? They have the antibody, and it turned into then the AIDS virus. So this is what I discovered. I'm not discovered. Just now I'm trying to figure out what the whole thing with the antibodies and the titer test. Okay, so the holistic community in the anti-vax world, they're trying to pass and promote a green vaccine because of their focus on the additives. Oh, the aborted fetus cells, the mercury and the aluminum and the formaldehyde and all that, right? Which isn't good, but they're trying to now program you and direct your belief system. Not belief system. They're trying to put in your head that, okay, if you have a vaccine that has all of these negative elements like formaldehyde and aborted fetus cells, then if you had a green vaccine, that would be a better thing. Do you see how that works? No different than the holistic community, you know, and the allopathic. They're two sides of the same coin, marketing the same thing, but in a different way. So then they're like, okay, so then here's the thing. They're also talking about titer tests. Because the other day, I totally exposed the whole point of why these anti-vaxxers in the holistic community are not promoting just getting the titer test to get the list of all of the antibodies that you've been exposed to, that you have in your body because of all the pathogens you've been exposed to then get out of getting the vaccine. And they're all focusing on only the articles of how there's poisons in the vaccines. And then the whole thing with Judy Mikovits saying, oh, they're putting cancer viruses in the vaccines and getting everybody all scared, right? And then, hey, guess what? Problem, reaction, solution. Here is a problem. Oh, there's poisons in the vaccines. Here's a reaction. Oh my God, we're going to die. And then here's a solution. Oh, we got a green vaccine. It doesn't have any of those extra additives, only the pathogen. Well, regardless, we figured out the antibodies are poisonous. Why are antibodies poisonous? Because you would not mix A, B, and O blood together, because the O negative person would die from all of that surface marker antigen that created antibodies. It would totally thicken their blood and shut down their system. So then you take it back to then the vaccine community, regardless of if it's a green vaccine or a GMO vaccine. When you're creating antibodies on a continuous basis, and not just vaccines, it's just your exposure to the environment. If you're not countering these negative elements that we're exposed to on a continuous basis and newly vaccinated people, guess what? You're creating antibodies on a continuous basis and you're not repairing the damage. So then your body is getting mutated, which is then creating more antibodies. And then you start seeing your body fall apart. And those of you who are getting sick all the time, you're always creating antibodies because you're being exposed to new pathogens. And then I'm like, okay, so that's interesting. So now we know it's the titer test. So now we don't even have to get the vaccine. You just got to be exposed to a vaccinated person. And that will create antibodies. Now, when are you contagious? When you're in inflammation. And then it shows me, then I'm now looking at AIDS, the AIDS virus, which is when you're in inflammation and when you're contagious. And then the HIV positive. You could be HIV positive and you be asymptomatic. Would you still be contagious? Yeah, I guess so. Potentially, yeah. But only through bodily fluids. It's not going to be airborne. But then there are some respiratory issues that I guess I heard that you wouldn't be contagious with a respiratory issue until you start feeling symptoms. So you can have the antibody in your body and not be contagious unless I guess you exchange bodily fluids. And then as soon as you start having symptoms is when you are contagious. But it's different for all the different diseases when a person's contagious and when it actually comes into full-blown disease. But then I'm looking at the titer test, right? I said, you guys get a titer test if you have a requirement to be vaccinated in all of these things, to say 10 different things. Well, go get a titer test from requestatest.com. They'll give you a list out of everything that you're positive for. And I'm like, Jesus, doesn't that just red flag you when they say you're positive for this virus? You're positive for this virus. You're positive for this antibody virus, whatever, /this/that. Oh, that just sends chills down my spine. That when you're looking to be positive for all of these different pathogens, that ought to alarm the shit out of all of you, vaxxed and unvaxxed. So then I'm looking, okay, so you can have the antibody of the AIDS, you can be HIV positive, but you could be asymptomatic. So at what point will the AIDS actually turn into like an actual full-blown AIDS where you're suffering? Now you're seeing symptoms. Well, look at somebody who comes down with an autoimmune disorder in the middle of their career. So, I know people in my life that were like, maybe they were drug addicts in their younger years. They received all their vaccines, maybe IV drug users, who knows, right? So they've been exposed to different diseases. So they have the antibodies in their body and they're going through life and they're doing all this running and, doing triathlons and competitions and all of this, right? And then one day, just out of the blue, they fall from rheumatoid arthritis or some autoimmune disorder like lupus, like fibromyalgia. And you're like, what the hell? And that's where my whole thing with future triggers on my protocol, where my protocol can help people with past issues, present issues, and future triggers. Those antibodies are the future triggers. Because when you go get a test, like same to titer test, or when you go get a test to see if you have this vaccine, it's marked. All of those antibodies are marked because it's already in the database. The information is already in the database in biotech. So when someone comes down with an autoimmune disorder, it's no different than being HIV positive, not saying they had AIDS, but it's no different than being HIV positive. And then when you drop from an autoimmune disorder where you are now symptomatic, you basically have full-blown AIDS or full-blown whatever that disease is. And then I'm saying now for those of you who have that issue with your kids that you claim to have be vaccine injured, as well as somebody that just came down with a major disease that just reared its ugly head out of the blue, though there were probably signs, but you didn't recognize them because you thought they were normal, go get a titer test. Go see what the most prevalent antibody is. And that'll tell you that's probably what caused this rheumatoid arthritis. Because you already have mutations based upon the initial exposure from that disease. Oh, shit. My husband. Honey, I'm on Facebook Live. What's up? Are you okay? Hold on. I gotta get off here. I gotta call my husband. Let me pause this. Or let me get back on here.